You won't believe what Elon Musk's former nanny does at 80 years old. You'll just be shocked. The morning sun crept over the hills of Bel Air, casting a golden glow on the minimalist mansion where Elon Musk sat quietly by the window. It was rare for him to have a moment of stillness, rarer still for him to scroll through old photo albums, real ones, not digital. As he flipped through the pages, a photo caught his eye, a younger him, maybe 5 years old, sitting atop the shoulders of an older woman with kind blue eyes and a wide, hearty laugh frozen forever in the picture. Her name was Margaret, or as he called her back then, Nanny Maggie. He hadn't thought about her in years. Life had swept him from South Africa to Silicon Valley, from building rockets to dreaming about Mars. But suddenly, that simple photo gripped his heart with an unexpected force. What had happened to her? Was she still alive? Could she possibly still be around? Without hesitation, Elon reached for his phone, heart pounding with a strange, boyish hope. A few quick calls to old family contacts, a search through public records, and then, almost impossibly, he found her. Margaret Porter, 80 years old, still living in a modest neighborhood just outside Pasadena. Still working, too, at a small daycare center tucked away on the edge of the city. Elon couldn't believe it. Working? At 80? His chest tightened with a mixture of guilt and awe. This woman who had once soothed his nightmares, tied his shoelaces, taught him silly songs, was still waking up every morning and caring for other people's children, when she should have been resting, enjoying sunsets, being celebrated. He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and made a decision without hesitation. He had to see her. But not just that, he had to do something extraordinary. Not because he was Elon Musk, the billionaire, but because, deep down, he was still that little boy on her shoulders, and she had once carried his world. As he drove across the city in his Cybertruck, the memories tumbled back faster than the cityscape rolling past his window. The bedtime stories, the nights she'd stayed up with him through feverish colds, the birthday cake she had baked with her own hands when his parents had forgotten. Every moment built into a quiet, stubborn resolution. Today would not be ordinary. When he pulled up outside the daycare, Elon was struck by how small and worn down the building looked. A faded Little Steps daycare sign creaked slightly in the soft breeze. Through the chain-link fence, he spotted a group of toddlers running around a cracked playground. And there she was, Margaret. Slightly stooped, hair now fully silver, but unmistakably her. She was sitting cross-legged on the ground, gently helping a boy tie his sneakers, smiling as if there was nowhere else in the world she'd rather be. Elon didn't move for a moment. The sight rooted him to the spot, a lump rising in his throat. He realized, standing there, that time was a thief, but it hadn't stolen her spirit. And then the real plan began forming in his mind. Elon remained standing outside the daycare's fence longer than he realized, watching Margaret with the kids. She moved slower now, but with the same grace and patience she had once given him. Every gesture, every soft word to the children was filled with that quiet, stubborn love he remembered so vividly. He had come here intending just to say hello, to perhaps offer her some financial help. But now, watching her work, truly seeing her, he realized that wasn't enough. Margaret didn't need a handout. She deserved a celebration, recognition, a gift that would honor the decades she had spent building lives, one scraped knee and bedtime story at a time. An idea, bold, wild, and totally in Elon Musk's style, began to crystallize. It would take planning, it would take resources, and it would have to be a secret. He wasn't going to just write a check and call it a day. He was going to change her life. Quietly, beautifully. First step, he pulled out his phone and called his chief of staff. "I need the best event planner in Los Angeles," he said, his voice brisk. "Something small, intimate, but perfect. Oh, and it needs to happen within a week." He hung up before there could be questions. Then he made another call to his construction team. "I need a playground rebuild," he said, staring at the cracked asphalt beneath the kids' feet. "Top quality. No shortcuts. I want it safe. I want it beautiful. And I want it to happen overnight without anyone noticing." The final call was the most delicate. A lawyer he trusted. "I want to purchase the building. Quietly. Transfer it to Margaret Porter, full ownership. She'll never have to work another day unless she wants to. But it has to look natural. No fanfare. No headlines." The sun was starting to lower by the time Elon finished making arrangements. He leaned back against his truck, staring up at the brilliant California sky, feeling more alive than he had in months. Space missions and electric cars were thrilling, but this was real. As he drove away that evening, careful not to let Margaret or any of the staff notice him, he couldn't stop smiling. His mind spun with details. What kind of ribbon would they use to unveil the new playground? How could they coax Margaret to attend the staff appreciation event without making her suspicious? And somewhere, deep in his chest, a child's happiness, the happiness he hadn't felt in decades, began to unfurl like a sleeping flower waking at last. He wasn't just paying back a debt of gratitude. He was giving her back something bigger, her dreams. And in just a few days, the world Margaret Porter thought she knew was going to change forever, but not in the way she, or anyone, could ever expect. The morning of the event dawned bright and warm, the kind of morning that promised magic if you were willing to look for it. Margaret woke early, just as she always did, her old bones aching slightly as she brewed herself a cup of coffee in her tiny kitchen. She didn't expect anything unusual today, just another day at Little Steps Daycare. Another day of helping tiny hands tie shoelaces and wiping tears from chubby cheeks. What she didn't know was that while she slept, an entire team had worked through the night under the cover of darkness. Trucks had rolled in at midnight, silent as ghosts. The old cracked playground had been dismantled, replaced with gleaming new structures, vibrant, safe, and magical. Bright yellow slides, climbing walls, a shaded reading nook with tiny bean bags. The grass was fresh, the fences repainted. It didn't look like a simple repair. It looked like a dream. At the daycare, the staff gathered earlier than usual, under instructions they found odd but didn't dare question. Something about a special appreciation day. They were told to wear bright colors. Margaret, bewildered but amused, pulled on a cheerful pink cardigan and tied a soft blue scarf around her neck. She still thought it was just some silly corporate exercise. As the clock struck 10, the children were led outside in a neat line, their little hands covering their eyes as the teachers whispered excitedly. Margaret walked with them, chuckling under her breath. And then, the moment came. The principal, a woman Margaret had worked with for over a decade, stood by the door holding a large, oversized ribbon. She cleared her throat, clearly emotional, and gestured toward the playground. "Today," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "we honor the heart of this place. A woman who has given her life to nurturing generations. Today is for Miss Margaret Porter." Margaret froze, blinking in confusion. Before she could say a word, the children were told to open their eyes. Their collective gasp echoed like a firework. The playground stood shining under the sun, ribbons fluttering from every corner. A massive banner stretched across the yard. "Thank you, Miss Margaret, for building dreams." Tears pricked Margaret's eyes before she could stop them. Around her, the children screamed with joy, running toward the playground, touching the new structures with wide-eyed wonder. Staff members clapped, some wiping away their own tears. Margaret turned in a daze, her heart thudding painfully in her chest, and that's when she saw him. Standing quietly by the gate, hands tucked into his pockets, was a tall man with unruly hair and a shy, almost boyish smile. Elon Musk. For a moment, the years peeled away. She wasn't 80. She wasn't tired. She was young again, holding a small, curious boy who had once clung to her hand and asked her endless questions about stars. The world around her faded. It was just them, just Margaret and her boy, grown up and come home. For a few heartbeats, Margaret couldn't move. The world seemed to tilt slightly, like the moment before waking from a vivid dream. She blinked, almost expecting Elon to disappear into the morning light. But he stayed, real, solid, smiling that same crooked smile he used to wear when he had hidden cookies behind his back as a child. Slowly, she stepped forward. Elon met her halfway, the sunlight casting a soft halo around them. When they finally embraced, it was not the stiff, awkward hug of strangers. It was the fierce, silent reunion of two people bound not by blood, but by something deeper, unconditional love and time. "You remembered me," Margaret whispered against his shoulder, her voice breaking. "I never forgot you," Elon murmured. His throat was tight with emotion. "How could I?" The daycare staff watched, many of them brushing away tears. Even the parents, who had gathered curiously nearby, seemed to sense the gravity of what was unfolding. No one spoke. No one dared interrupt. When they finally pulled apart, Elon placed his hands gently on Margaret's shoulders and looked her straight in the eye, the way a man looks at a person who saved him once and didn't even know it. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," he said, his voice low and earnest. "You didn't just take care of me. You believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Margaret chuckled softly, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. You were always meant for something bigger, she said. I just kept you out of trouble long enough for you to figure it out. Elon laughed, the sound breaking through the heavy emotion like a beam of sunlight. But then he grew serious again. I came today not just to say thank you, he said. I came to make sure you'll never have to work another day unless you want to. Margaret tilted her head, confused. Elon pulled a small folder from his jacket pocket and pressed it into her hands. Inside were documents, simple, official, undeniable. The daycare was now hers, fully paid for. Every bill covered. Every future need secured. Margaret's knees wobbled, and Elon quickly slipped an arm around her to steady her. She opened the folder with trembling fingers, scanning the papers as understanding slowly dawned. I bought the building, Elon explained softly. Renovated it. Put it in your name. You can keep it running if you want, or you can retire today. Whatever you decide, it's yours now. Margaret stared at him, open-mouthed, as the magnitude of it all sank in. Around them, the children played joyfully, blissfully unaware that history, quiet, invisible history, was being written in their playground. Tears streamed down Margaret's cheeks. She clutched the folder to her chest, overwhelmed not by the money, but by the thoughtfulness behind it. You didn't have to do this, she whispered. I know, Elon said, smiling gently. But you did everything for me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn. The sun shifted, casting long golden rays across the playground. The banner fluttered softly in the breeze. Margaret Porter, the woman who had once stitched a broken toy spaceship for a little boy dreaming of the stars, was finally receiving the recognition she had never asked for, but always deserved. And this was just the beginning. As Margaret stood clutching the folder, the children around her still laughing and climbing, Elon gave a small nod to the event coordinator standing discreetly near the fence. In an instant, the quiet playground transformed. Music drifted into the air, soft, joyful melodies. Tables appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, covered in bright cloths and stacked with food, lemonade, and cupcakes crowned with tiny edible stars. Balloons in every color floated toward the sky, each tied carefully around the yard. The staff appreciation event was no longer a simple gathering. It was a full celebration for Margaret. One by one, former students arrived, grown adults now, who had once sat on her lap or clung to her skirts, faces glowing with excitement and emotion. Word had spread like wildfire. Dozens came, and then hundreds. Some brought flowers. Others brought their children, telling them, "This is the woman who taught me to be kind, to be brave." One man, now a decorated firefighter, knelt in front of her and placed a small badge in her hand. "I wouldn't be here without you," he said simply. Margaret could hardly breathe, overwhelmed by the sea of faces, all connected by invisible threads woven by decades of her quiet work. She covered her mouth with her hands, laughing and crying at once, her shoulders shaking with the sheer force of gratitude pouring back toward her. Elon stayed near, watching silently, not needing to be the center of attention. His heart was full in a way no business deal, no rocket launch, had ever filled it before. This wasn't about him. It was about honoring a life spent lifting others without ever asking for anything in return. When the music paused, the principal tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, voice thick with emotion, "today we are not just thanking Margaret Porter. We are honoring every unseen hero who ever gave without expectation, who ever loved without condition." She turned to Margaret, her voice breaking slightly. "You carry generations on your back. And today, we carry you." The crowd erupted into applause so thunderous it seemed to lift the very air. Children cheered, parents wept openly, balloons soared higher. And Margaret, standing in the center of it all, was no longer just a quiet figure in the background of life. She was the heart, the soul, the story. And for the first time in her life, she allowed herself to accept it. Every clap, every tear, every smile. She soaked in the gratitude she had so long deserved but never sought. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, Elon approached her once more. He leaned down slightly, his voice quiet so only she could hear. "You once told me," he said, "that the greatest thing anyone can do is leave a place better than they found it." Margaret smiled through her tears, nodding. "You did that, Miss Maggie," Elon whispered. "You made all of us better." For the first time in a very, very long time, Margaret Porter allowed herself to believe it. And it felt like flying. As the sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky with hues of gold and soft violet, the celebration at Little Steps Daycare slowly wound down. Children clutched balloon strings in sticky hands, their laughter fading into the warm evening air. Families embraced Margaret, lingering just a little longer, reluctant to let go of the woman who had shaped so many lives in ways words could barely express. The new playground gleamed under the soft light strung overhead, a living symbol of gratitude and hope, of dreams nurtured quietly and selflessly over decades. It wasn't just a playground now, it was a monument to kindness, to resilience, to the power of one life poured into others without fanfare. Elon stayed until the very last guest had left. No cameras, no speeches, no tweets. Just him, Margaret, and the quiet hum of a world made a little better because of her. As the staff cleaned up the last of the decorations, Elon sat with Margaret on a bench beneath the wide old oak tree that had shaded the daycare yard for generations. They talked long into the evening, not about money or fame or Mars, but about life, about the small things, about the moments that mattered most. Margaret laughed as she recounted silly childhood memories of Elon, how he had once tried to build a spaceship out of cardboard boxes and duct tape, determined even then to go beyond the world he knew. Elon listened with a boyish grin, feeling something rare and sacred bloom inside him, a connection to his roots, to the quiet hands that had steadied him when the ground beneath him was unsure. Finally, when the stars blinked awake in the velvet sky, Elon stood, brushing dust from his jeans. "I'm not done," he said quietly, a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Margaret raised an eyebrow, curious. He smiled, warm and genuine. "I'm setting up a foundation in your name. The Margaret Porter Foundation for Children's Futures. Full scholarships, daycares, mentorships. Wherever a child dreams, your name will be there, holding them up." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth, her breath catching. She had given her life to children, quietly, one at a time. She had never dreamed her work would ripple outward like this, touching thousands, perhaps millions, far beyond what she could see. Tears slid down her cheeks, but this time they were different. They were tears of joy, of release, of a soul finally seen, finally honored. Elon reached down and gently squeezed her hand. "You carried us, Miss Maggie," he said softly. "Now it's our turn." They sat together a little longer, under the stars, two lives forever intertwined, one who had once needed saving, and one who had always known the power of a small hand held in love. And long after the lights faded, after the laughter drifted into memory, after the playground grew quiet again, the legacy of Margaret Porter lived on, not just in the shiny new daycare, not just in the foundation, but in every life she had touched. A legacy written not in headlines, but in hearts. A legacy that would never, ever fade.